High standards start with us. They start with you. They start with me. They start with holding yourself to a higher level and not projecting your expectations onto everyone else as much as you possibly can. Welcome to the Spinoso Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Alex Spinoso, and my experience and expertise is in scaling all types of medical businesses to 7, 8, and even 9 figures. And I'm sharing my journey with you. This isn't a podcast telling you you should do this. I'm just telling you how I did this. I want to help you build your business, take ownership of your life, and become a better leader at home and at work. As always, you can connect with me at Dr. Alex Spinoso on Instagram, Dr. Alex Spinoso on the interwebs. And if you are a medical entrepreneur and want to join our medical mastermind, and I say our, Mr. Vaughn Kohler and I, the pastor of disaster, it is at joincharismatics.com. And today, what are we talking about today, Miss
To-
Amanda May?
Today, we are talking about high standards and perfectionism and how you can tell the difference between the two.
I like it. I like it. So this is always a funny topic because everybody's like, oh well, neurotic perfectionism. Like I agree that in the medical field, physicians, nurse practitioners, anybody with a higher like quote unquote license or higher degree, they always overthink everything and they want to be perfectionists on absolutely everything,
Mm.
and it fucks up their business so bad because they want to know how everything's going to go. What are all the solutions 100% ahead of time? And it never fucking works out that way in business at all. But they think they can control it. They think that somehow, having that out there or having the idea that everything has to be absolutely perfect is what's going to help them succeed. But we'll see. I may have been off of what we're actually talking about today. Let's
No,
let's
you're
let's
right.
dive into it.
You're right on. I love it. So, Mark Cuban has a quote that perfectionism is the enemy of profitability. And I love that quote. And it was the first thing I thought of when I was looking over our show notes for the day. And I think it's something that it comes up often for entrepreneurship in entrepreneurship is the difference between having high standards and then being a neurotic perfectionist. And neurotic is a little extreme. I think perfectionism uh in any level can be the enemy of your profitability, as Mark Cuban would say. And a lot of people pride themselves on having high standards, and that's really good. But in reality, what they might actually be doing is being a perfectionist, and then that has the opposite effect and actually holds them back from getting to the level that they want to be at. And so today we're going to break it down and we're going to share 4 key strategies that help you have high standards, but not necessarily the perfectionism, and how you can see if what you're doing is actually perfectionism in disguise, and why understanding the difference of this will help your growth as an entrepreneur and as a human being. All right. So, that first topic that we're going to talk about today is how high standards actually leads to action while perfectionism stops you. So, where have you seen this show up in your growth with Genesis? You've gotten very far, very fast with this company. And have you seen times in your life where you've maybe started out from like a perfectionist standpoint and then you're like, okay, wait a minute, I can't do that. Like it's hindering me and I got to let go of the reins. And like, how has this topic actually shown up for you in the growth of Genesis?
I think it's shown up actually opposite for us in the growth of Genesis because Brent and I have gone really far really fast, and as a result we couldn't be perfect about anything. It was just implement, 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 roll it out, roll it out, roll it out, and then look back and say, oh fuck, we probably need a you know an actual process for this or an actual process for that, and it's going back and creating those processes after the fact. So we have always taken it to the extreme of, well, we're kind of, let's just be too stupid to fail. Let's just do it, try it, see if it works. If it works, great. If it doesn't work, we'll fix it. And if it works and that's great, let's see how we can make it even better. And it's
Mm,
shown up for me because I've seen other colleagues or business partners or other people try and go through all the things that can go wrong or try and solve for all the problems beforehand, and they just stay exactly where they are because they're trying to compute all the different things that can go wrong, all the issues that can happen, solve all the problems before they actually have problems. And as a result of that, they're solving the wrong problems or they're focusing on the wrong thing
mm,
because the thing is not the thing. There's that old phrase, the thing is never the thing. When you start business or when you scale business, what you think is going to be a problem or an issue, a lot of times is not. It's something that's out in left field that you didn't realize was an issue with your process, your procedures, the way your team was handling something, and that comes to light. And you're never going to be able to know what that is. You're not going to be able to know that ahead of time. You just have to do it, and that's when it comes out as, oh shit, okay, we got to fix this problem. I didn't anticipate this. So making sure that you are focused on that, making sure that you're remembering that and knowing that what you're trying to figure out is you're never going to be able to figure out beforehand. So just do it. It's really a part of this is urgency. And Brent and I talk about this all the time. People fucking lack urgency in every aspect of their life. They lack urgency. Like, you don't have all this time.
mm.
There's that meme or whatever is Oprah was in her 40s when she got famous, and Colonel Sanders was in his 60s when he invented thing. Yeah, but they were fucking working towards it their entire life. It's the same for me. It's the same for you. Like, you need to be consistently working towards something. Shit just doesn't just manifest in your 40s or 50s or 60s. You do not have time. And if you do it in your 40s, 50s, or 60s, guess what? Colonel Sanders, great. He had a good, what, 10, 15, 20 years before he died? Awesome. 60 years doing fucking jack shit until he made it famous.
Mm.
Okay. So do something now. You have to have the urgency now, and you have to have those high standards now, and you have to freaking execute day in, day out, over and over and over.
Yeah, that's so, so true. It's like the overnight success, but they work 20 years to get there. Um, and the perfectionism, I had one of my first business coaches uh taught me that you don't even know if you have something somebody wants to buy. You're working on it to to solve problems, if you will, or make it perfect before you launch it, but you don't even know if somebody wants it. Like, what are you making perfect? You're spending all this time. Well, what if whatever you're working on, nobody wants to buy anyway? You've wasted all of this time. Put something out, see if people want to buy it, and then figure out all the details that go with it and maybe how to structure, how to scale it, which is, what is it was a good lesson for me because I can get stuck in that perfect idea at
Mm,
times. Like, I want it to be great before I tell anyone about it.
mhm.
And it should be good. So it's like, when does that happen? When do you know, like, okay, now I've created something that's good enough that we can move forward, so that you're not stuck in perfectionism, but and paralyzed by this idea of perfect, but you actually are able to move forward with what you want to do. Like, when do you know that?
Well, I think when you're solving a problem that people want to pay you for. If you're solving a problem that a lot of people have, guess what? People are going to come and they're going to pay you for it. And so if you've got a product that people are paying you for and it's growing and people are referring their friends to it, then you've got a product that's going to scale.
Mm,
And that's as simple as that. And at the same time, then, okay, how can we make this product better? How can we make it faster? How can we do whatever we need to do to increase the value that we are providing to somebody? Because if it's a faster value, if it's a higher quality product, those are all things that are going to drive the price that you charge, and it's going to drive the price that people pay for that service.
mm. Yeah, so it sounds like, high standards really drive progress and growth because as you're making it better, you're getting feedback from your customer or the people that work for you to find out how do you actually make it better. And, those key insights make a more perfect product.
Right. And those key insights, those things that will drive innovation, will drive growth, they're almost like making a mistake. They're akin to that because if you are innovating, if you're growing, if you're improving your processes, then what you did before was essentially a mistake. You could think about it that way.
Mm,
It got you to where you were, but it wasn't like the final ultimate product. And whether or not your clientele was ready for that final ultimate product, you have to think in your mind, it's okay. It's okay to have a bunch of iterations of a product and it improves over and over and over. It's okay. That's look at cars, look at exotic cars, look at any type of vehicle in general with their safety and their automatic braking now and the more seatbelts and what the fuck they called airbags than
mm,
ever before. Like they're innovating to make things safer and safer and safer instead of just like a metal cube that you kind of strap yourself in and hope you don't like run into anything and die. Um, and so innovating is like, well, were all the things before mistakes? Not
mm.
necessarily. They're like Bob Ross, where they're not they're not mistakes. They're happy accidents.
It's
There you go right there.
good.
Where and that's with entrepreneurship. It's fucking messy. It's absolute chaos. There are things that are going to happen all the time that are going to derail you. Your day's going to get off track. Your meetings aren't going to go right. And no matter what, if you're holding high standards, those things are not going to greatly affect the direction that you're going in.
Mm,
But if you 100% are like, well, we got to be perfect. This day has to run the exact way it needs to. You're never going to get through the entire day. You're going to fucking have to chase everything down. You're going to be like, well, fuck, I can't. Like, you got this problem, and this problem, this problem. That's part of life.
mm.
You having high standards are like, okay, we're going to get these things done. I don't know how we're going to do it, but this is X, Y, and Z steps to get it done. And if shit hits the fan and it all goes wrong, we're going to fix it and we're going to improve upon it. It's not that perfectionism is nothing that ever goes wrong and there's nothing that we need to worry about. It's, having that perfectionism idealistic is knowing that, hey, we're going to just at this job in this business we just execute and there's going to be problems, there's going to be issues, there's going to be concerns, there's going to be things that come up, but we're going to attack them as a team and we're going to embrace those as opportunities to get better and better and better.
Yeah. So what I hear you saying is that high standards allows for mistakes and perfectionism doesn't.
Yep.
And it's interesting when I think about that, if you create something and you go, okay, it's perfect, that's it, it's perfect from the jump, then you leave no room for growth and innovation because you're not going to be looking for it. You're not going to be looking for where could this be better because you think it's already done. And so, in anything in life and business, anything you think is done that it's perfect just the way that it is, you have cut off your supply to growth.
Mhm.
So it's like having high standards, but allowing that because that allows a space, I would say, for growth or mistakes to happen that lead to growth.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. If you're not growing, you're not learning. And if you're not learning and growing, you're dying.
Mm,
It's as simple as that. And people with high standards, it's you're not trying to avoid the mistakes, you're embracing those mistakes as much as possible because all the mistakes you make, it's the dumb tax. You are learning, you're paying, you're having these problems or the issues come up so that you know how to solve them because they're going to come up at some point or another in your entire career. So it's better that you get as many of those lessons out as possible and get out in front of them and learn that, hey, having those mistakes are actually good. It's actually part of growth. It's actually a part of improving yourself. in your processes.
Something you've
Mhm.
done really well is foster a culture of the space for people to make mistakes in
Mhm.
Genesis. How do you think you've done that?
I think that was one of the things that Brent and I wanted to implement early on, is that anybody make can bring up an idea or something that will help us improve. And that's how we've gotten a lot of innovation and a lot of growth, is because Brent and I are no longer seeing the people at the front desk or seeing the clients. So we need to rely on our team, and our team needs to rely on the fact that if we bring something up, it's going to get fixed or it's going to improve the way we run things. And so we have to have that open door policy with them coming to us and really not being afraid of retaliation or getting knocked down or anything like that. And that was one of the things when it came to Amazing Workplace that they said that we scored really high on safety. People
Mhm.
felt safe to be able to talk to their managers, to be able to talk to us about changes or issues or concerns, that there wouldn't be a repercussions from bringing those things up. And you have to have that in your business as well, that if somebody's going to challenge you, if they do it in a uh, proper way, privately, not in front of everybody, et cetera, type things, that you're going to be open to what they have to say and open to change and open to improvement. And that is a huge part of what we've done at Genesis. And at the same time, we always tell them, we remind them all the time, it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to
Mhm.
fuck up. What's not okay is to not have accountability, because that's our core value, and not tell anyone about it. So tell us about it, how you fixed it, have some accountability for it, and we'll be absolutely fine. You'll never get yelled at for doing something where you made a mistake or did something wrong. You will get yelled at for trying to hide it or trying to lie about it.
Well, that's an integrity issue.
100%. Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah, you go from making a mistake, an actual accident, to an actual integrity issue, and you've now hit the core values of the company. That's a whole different conversation there.
Right. It's a
Yeah.
whole different
Yeah.
conversation.
Um, that's funny because growing up, another thing, and I've talked about a few different things growing up the way I was, but one of the things is I tell on myself because I can't. If I make a mistake,
Mhm.
I can't hide it. Like it hurts my soul if I make a mistake. Like I
That's
have to
funny.
tell on myself. So I was never the type of kid that would like get in trouble because my mom found out later about something. It was like I did it and it ate me up on the inside. And I'm like, I have to tell you what I did. Um,
That's hilarious.
she's like, I don't know how to ground you now.
Yeah.
You just told on yourself, like, oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, so it's one way. I
It's
mean,
genius. That's
yeah,
manipulation
I
101.
didn't do it that way on purpose. But as I got older, I probably learned this is a good way to move in
Yeah.
life because I actually, the
Yeah.
one I'm accountable
Transparency.
and
100%
transparency.
accountable
Yeah.
and transparency.
Yeah. I can't sleep at the end of the day if I know I did something.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Um, and so, and that brings me to what would be like our third strategy to dig into, which is high standards really focuses on you and what you can do, where perfectionism focuses on maybe something somebody else has done. And so it takes the attention and energy off of being personally accountable and puts it on other people. Like, you should do it this way, or you made this mistake, or this kind of like blame game that can happen. And so focusing on the fact that what can you do to be your best versus what has somebody else done or hasn't done. And then that changes the level of perfectionism that is required. It's a lot more flexible.
Yeah, 100%. And accountability is one of our core values, specifically because of this, because accountability naturally sets extremely high standards. Now, it's not perfectionism by any means, because accountable means you're accountable for the things you do right and you're accountable for the things you do wrong. It doesn't say accountable people never do anything wrong. It, it doesn't mean that by any means. So it just says that high standards start with us. They start with you. They start with me. They start with holding yourself to a higher level and not projecting your expectations onto everyone else as much as you possibly can. As a leader, you're going to have expectations for everyone else. You're
Mhm.
going to have to project that onto them. And as a result, there may be people that just don't fit certain positions because they can't fit into that role because they don't live up to the same expectations or don't have the same expectations you do. But accountability helps me get away from a lot of that. It's like I have expectations, but you should have expectations for yourself. And if you don't,
Mm,
that's not the type of person that I want in my business. I do want somebody that has a high level of accountability, and accountability can be learned, it can be trained. And if you don't have that, you're focused on other people. You're focused on what everyone else is doing. You're focused on all the little mistakes and imperfections everyone else has instead of yourself. It's neurotic and narcissistic to think like that. If you're thinking about what everyone else is doing, well, they're not doing it. They're not doing it. It's like
mm,
that's not accountability. You're not holding yourself accountable and holding those high standards or having those high standards are about improving yourself, not micromanaging everyone else. And I will tell staff if they come to me with a problem that somebody else did, I will ask, did you talk to that person about it? No, then why the fuck are you telling me? Like, I don't care. Go fucking tell that person about it
mm.
and solve it and say, hey, I noticed this, this, or this. Let's solve this together. You better have talked to them before you bring it up with me. And then if there are issues or standards or anything like that, and there's nobody to talk to about it, or you're talking to your team or anything like that, yeah, then bring it up. Bring up, but at the same time, if you're going to come up with a problem or bring a problem to us, come up with at least three good solutions. Think of three things that you can possibly do to solve that problem, and you don't have to be right. You just have to start thinking in that solving mentality. And again, that's not a perfectionism mentality. It doesn't your solution doesn't have to be perfect. We'll help you talk through it and maybe we come up with something that's okay. And as we implement it, we figure out, well, this works and this doesn't work. And it evolves, it innovates, and we grow as a team. And having that determination to get through that issue over and over and over as a team, that's what we do. That's how we are as a company. So making sure that you are having that you have those high standards, you stick to those high standards, you tell everybody about those high standards, and you hold yourself accountable for those high standards as well.
Yeah, and we do that at Genesis through the Ritz-Carlton mindset. We have a couple aspects. It's the Genesis way and the Ritz-Carlton mindset. And what we've done is really taken those high standards of what you would experience if you were to go to a Ritz-Carlton and implement them into our business in more of a medical standpoint. How are people getting treated? What's the wow factor? Are we hitting their five senses when they walk in the door? Like, what is the standard in which we treat our clients so that they know, like, and trust us and then want to continue to come back? So we retain those customers for a longer period of time, hopefully forever.
Mhm.
And so those are high standards that are communicated very clearly and directly to our teammates. And that's done one through the Genesis way, which is the way of business. How are we doing things? How are we being? Who are we being? As a person, we have these high standards. These are the things we're doing. But then the Genesis way is how are we being in the process of doing, which directly correlate with our core values. And each person has to know and understand and implement our core values in order to stay aligned with our company. And when we see that people are not, that's when reprimand happens. So it's really directly connected to their own behavior and whether or not they are living out our core values on a daily basis. Now, granted, people have bad days or bad months or a bad year, even sometimes.
Mhm.
But if somebody is continually not living in our core values, well, then we know that they just aren't aligned with our company and we're not the best fit for them as far as work goes. And so it's keeping those high standards. And there have been times where you guys have had to get rid of teammates, let people go based off integrity issues or core value issues. And it always goes back to that. So people know if they're not living up to the standards that we have set in Genesis, then they're just not going to stay a part of our team. And that's okay. Like, we're just not a good fit. And so having those, if you're listening, and you have a business and you're like, how does this work for me? That's the place to start is core values, setting those standards, communicating them to your teams on a regular basis, and then hiring and firing based off those core values. And that's how you set high standards without uh, dropping into perfectionism.
100%. Yep.
That I just went on a little
That
tangent,
was
but
perfect. No, that was absolutely 100% true. And I think that like CEOs and leaders are not hard enough on their core values. They're not hard enough on having those rules, those tests, those 10 commandments to run your business. You have to be steadfast in those. You have to be voracious in protecting those. And when you do, your teammates will understand, okay, this is actually who we are. They're not just words up on the fucking wall. And I know CEOs are not hard enough on themselves with their core values and not hard enough on their staff with their core values. You would 100% have, that's one thing that is, you have to be a absolute psychopath about 100%.
the final element to this conversation is high standards are flexible, while perfectionism is very rigid. And I think of this as two trees standing, and you've got this actually happened in Florida when I was living there. A hurricane came through.
And one tree sharpens his axe every day and one tree
No,
doesn't.
that was the
Oh, that
lumberjack
was
story. And that
lumberjacks.
was our
Oh,
last. So if you
okay.
want to hear the lumberjack story, you have to check out our self-care podcast. But this story is a legitimate story that happened in my life, which was a hurricane came through and my son and I, it was okay. We weren't going to die. We were watching out the window. And it was quite fascinating to watch the storm roll through. And while we're watching it, an oak tree fell over just by its roots, just toppled over. All the
Mhm.
roots are up. It's just very rigid. It's very inflexible tree. But then the palm trees are just swaying and
Mhm.
they're, fine. You don't see a palm tree ever uprooted, toppled over on the ground because of a storm. It just doesn't happen. And so I think about that when you have high standards, think about the vastness of a palm tree and how it is very flexible in its movement. And any storm comes along and it's going to be standing. But yet you have these big, solid oak trees, other trees with maybe smaller root systems that are super inflexible. And those are going to be the ones that topple over in the end and just don't make it through the storm. And so, what kind of tree do you want to be?
No, you're absolutely right about being, flexible. And what I tell leaders all the time, and something that I've had to learn, is have the beginning, train people, teach people what to do, teach people how to do it, and then have the end result or the goal or the key performance indicator KPI that you want them to hit. If they hit that, cool, they fucking did it. Who cares how they did it in the middle of it? As long as they follow the core values, so they're not doing anything that's outside of integrity, but they write a note a different way or prescribe a medication slightly different than what you would, or solve a problem in a different way. As long as they got to the end result,
Mhm.
who the fuck cares how they did it in the middle? It's like Common Core math, or it's like your teachers growing up. I want to see your work or what you thought of in your head put on paper. Fucking why? Did they get the answer? Yes. Okay. Then nobody fucking cares about the work in between. They care about the answer at the end. They care about the solution at the
Mhm.
end. That's it. If they got it wrong, then you could say, okay, cool, show me your work so I can figure out where you went wrong.
Mhm.
But if you got it right and that kid can do it in his head, then there's no fucking reason they got to write it down. It's the same thing for your staff. Like if you have processes and procedures and they go through it and they are closing every single client and they're dominating the say this is a sales thing, then okay, cool. They could do whatever they want to do because they are crushing it. If they're completely off and they're not crushing it, Okay, let's go back to your work. Let's see how you're doing that consult, etc. And then you should go back and the people who are crushing it, you could see how they're doing it and improve your processes based off what they're doing, not what you currently have. Because obviously theirs is even better than what
Mhm.
you probably have. And consistently innovating. And that's part of being the flexible is that you can't have rigid expectations. You could have generalized expectations, but then when it really comes down to it, you have to see what each individual, what each location, client, person is going through to make sure that you are holding your high standards as something that is flexible.
One of the things that is very powerful when it comes to being flexible is the concept of curiosity. Being curious allows for you to find out the viewpoint in which someone's looking at something. Why are they doing it the way that they're doing it? So if they are doing it different but getting to the end result, how'd they do that? Why did they do that? You know, what was the resulting condition? Because that's where you learn and grow. And that's where you can have high standards. We got to the result,
Mhm.
but the curiosity is where you're not rigid and you're allowing that space to really find out where is this what drove this person to do it that way, because we can all get what we want. We can all end up to our goals as long as we're not stopping somebody else from reaching theirs. There's no rule that life has to look a certain way or that every single thing has to be done a certain way. Now, in our field, there are certain things that have SOPs that have to get followed
Mhm.
for proper medical care. But outside of that, everything else is left up to kind of interpretation. And being curious is the only way that you find out new ways of doing things. So you have to, as a leader, ask a lot of questions. I hear this statement a lot, like as a leader, be a good listener. But I think it goes a step further than that. It's not just about being a good listener.
Mhm.
It's waiting to share your perspective until you've heard everyone else's. It allows everyone else to feel heard, understood,
Mhm.
like they're a part of your journey in the process and they created some value. And then you give your perspective. But that means that you have this space of curiosity and openness about you to find out what do other people really think in these roles and in this situation that we can learn from and grow from as a team, which is just kind of saying what you already said, just in a
Yeah.
different way.
Yeah. Perfectionism is like, I have to control everything. Everything has to be done my way. And if you're unwilling to adapt, then that's not holding high standards. You're just being a stubborn dick that isn't going to, and that's not going to improve your business in any way by any means. You have to balance it. You have to balance the discipline with the ability to adapt. You have to balance the growth with the ability to innovate, and it's always going to be there and be you're going to have to play both sides of the coin when it comes to growing.
What do you feel like has been for somebody that's listening and they're wanting to be a better leader and they're wanting to embrace these concepts? Is there one thing or even a few things that you feel like somebody needs to be in order to have a more flexible viewpoint or allow space for mistakes?
Yeah, so you should be inflexible about your core values. And again, if you want to know how you do your core values, you can go to Dr. Alex Spinoza on slash courses and look up the core value section, or go back to the core value podcast that we've done before. But once you have your core values chosen with you and your team, then you should be absolutely inflexible on those core values. That's what you hire, fire, reprimand, reward, everything goes through those core values 100%. But the rest of it, everything outside the core values, you have to be fucking adaptable. Now, there may be some things in your business where it requires a license or a very specific way of doing something, or maybe you work on, let's say, a like assembly line where if you don't do this one thing properly every single time, it's gonna fuck it up. That's not when you adapt. That's not when you fucking innovate and think, well, I'm gonna put it in this way instead and see how it works. That's not how it fucking works. What we mean by this is that when there are issues that arise, or when there are things that you think you can make better and improve upon, that you bring those up. And as a leader, those leaders are holding themselves to a higher standard of, okay, I'm going to listen to this. I'm going to see if it's a good idea. I'm going to implement those ideas. If I don't know, or if I think it might help, I'm going to implement them. I mean, if I know for a fact that it is going to fuck up our business if I do that, then explaining, hey, that's probably not going to work. And this is why XYZ. But otherwise, as business owners, most of the time you don't know if something's going to work until you actually do it. So being okay with doing it and experimenting, and realize that those are the happy accidents that are going to come around. And sometimes those happy accidents explode your business into growth,
Mm.
because you're not looking in that direction. You need to be flexible with that. That's what you need to be as a leader. So, guys, short one for you today. I think that's kind of everything we wanted to cover. If you guys want to connect with me, dralexspinoso.com. You can always email questions at dralexspinoso.com. If you have any questions, we'll answer them on the show. You know, if you are a medical entrepreneur and want to learn about how to scale or grow or run your business, join the mastermind that I have. Join charismatics.com. And Amanda, let's go through the recap of this episode so far.
Yeah. So if you're just tuning in, you didn't catch some of these, we're just going to do a quick recap. So, if you want to restart this over, and what value you're going to get out of it. And I keep moving my chair, so the camera guy might be yelling at me after this. I might be a little blurry. Sorry about that if you're watching. So first one is that if your standards keep you from acting, then they're not standards. You're being a perfectionist. So high standards cause action. Perfectionism stops it. Number two, high standards expect mistakes and allow for you to focus on fixing them, while perfectionism fears mistakes and doesn't allow the space for real growth. The third one, that would be six. So just three. The third.
She's holding up 3 and 3 on each fan.
The third one.
Okay.
Our high standards focus on yourself, while perfectionism unfairly focuses on others. And the final one, the fourth one, is that high standards are adaptable, while perfectionism is rigid and controlling. So remember that high standards are a key to success, and making sure that your client or customer experience is one where they want to continue to come back, tell all their friends, become raving fans, and stick with you for a very long time, increasing the average value of a customer, which is what we all want for more profitability in our companies. And so that is definitely something we promote and think you should have in your business. But avoiding perfectionism, which actually limits and stops your growth and does the exact opposite of what you really want. So focus on having high standards and letting go of perfectionism, because nothing's ever perfect. If we look at life, there are a lot of things that we would maybe prefer be different, but those are all experiences that we have learned and grown from and become who we are today. So those are valuable lessons for you and for your teams. So embrace those, because those are also very good aspects to life and business.
Absolutely. The goal isn't to abandon your standards, guys. The goal is to have very fucking high standards. And if people say, well, your standards are too high, well, get the fuck out. The standards are there because that's what we hold ourselves to. But just make sure that those standards are driving you forward and not holding you back. Do not be rigid in your thinking. Do not be rigid in how you run your businesses. Be flexible. Bring a lot of people with you, and they're going to help you 100% every single time.